Welcome back to Backspace Academy. In this lecture on Simple Storage Service, or S3, we're going to be going into a little bit more detail because we already know what S3 is. We've already created buckets, we've created websites, and we've done a lot with Amazon S3, but we're going to go into a little bit more detail that you need to know for the exam. So we'll talk more about security around S3, and we'll talk about the different storage classes that are available. We'll talk about lifecycle management, so how we can automate archiving of our S3 data. And finally, we'll finish up with versioning, how we can implement version control on our S3 buckets. Okay, we already know quite a bit about Amazon S3. We know what a bucket is. We know it contains objects. One thing we may not have realized is that a bucket will grow depending on the number of data or the number of objects and the amount of data that is put in that bucket. And that is technically unlimited. So you can put as much as you want in a bucket and it will just grow to an unlimited size. Bucket names, they must be unique. They must be at least 3 and no more than 63 characters long. They cannot be an IP address format. So for example, there, if you've got an IP address of 102 dot whatever, it cannot be like that. It must be lowercase, it cannot be uppercase, and it must not contain underscores as well. Objects, so we've already uploaded objects to a bucket before. We know that they're the entities that can go into a bucket, and they consist of data, but they also can have metadata attached to those buckets as well. The size of an object, it can be from anywhere from 0 bytes to a maximum of 5 terabytes. But you need to consider that the largest object that you can upload in one part is 5 gigabytes. So if you want to upload something that's 5 terabyte, you're going to have to use a multi-part upload to do that. And so that's recommended for anything from 100 meg up to the maximum of 5 terabytes. S3, it is secure by default. By default, everything is private, so you need to make it public if you want to change that. It can be modified through IAM roles, users and groups, and that will give fine-grained control. You can also have bucket policies applied to that bucket, and that again will give you similar fine-grained control that IAM roles have. But you can also have access control lists, and they can be applied to either the bucket or the object level. They're not as fine-grained, but they are another level of security you may want to attach to your S3 buckets. We have a number of storage classes available with S3. The one that we've been using previously is standard, and that gives 99 point a whole heap of nines durability, and it is replicated across multiple availability zones. So if an availability zone goes down, then that data will still be protected in the other availability zone. But if an entire region goes down, that's not going to be the case. You will lose you may lose your data. It's 99.99% available, and it supports SSL encryption in transit and at rest through server-side encryption. It also has lifecycle management, so you can automate the process of migrating old data over to an archiving solution such as Glacier. There's also another standard that's come in, which is infrequent access, and so that is the same features as S3 standard, but it has a lower per gigabyte storage price. But when you want to get that data, you're going to be paying a per gigabyte retrieval fee. So if it's not very frequently accessed data, and you want something in between maybe Glacier, which is a long-term archiving solution, and standard, that is a good option. And then we have standard one zone infrequent access, and that is durability, but only across a single availability zone. So it's different to standard infrequent access and different to standard in that it doesn't have multi-availability zones. So if the availability zone goes down, you could possibly lose your data. It's 99.5% available, so slightly lower, but it has an even lower per gigabyte storage price than standard infrequent access. And again, it has a per gigabyte retrieval fee. And finally there, we've got reduced redundancy storage. This is quite an old storage class, and AWS are slowly deprecating that out, and I think eventually it will disappear, but it's not recommended for new architectures. It provides 99.99% durability and 99.99% availability. But again, there is actually not really much of a cost saving by using it as well. So AWS are trying to discourage people from using RRS. Amazon Glacier is AWS's archiving solution as a service, and it provides the lowest cost object storage class. So it's much cheaper than Amazon S3. It provides very high durability, and it's across 3 availability zones, not 2 availability zones. You have 3 retrieval options, and your costs will vary according to that. So you can retrieve it expedited, which is 1 to 5 minutes, or standard, which is 3 to 5 hours, and then you can have bulk, which is 5 to 12 hours. The cost will vary depending on what your retrieval option is. And I just mentioned previously about lifecycle policies for Amazon S3, and that will enable you to migrate your old data across to Glacier. So that allows for object deletion after an expiry time, and then object archiving to Glacier after expiry time. And they can always be restored back from Glacier back to Amazon S3. So it's a really good solution for example, accounting records that need to be kept for tax purposes, but you don't want to access them so much. You're probably more interested in the current financial year's data rather than the financial years from 10 years ago, for example. We can also set up versioning on our buckets, and that will preserve copies of objects inside of a bucket. So individual objects, they can be restored back to previous versions, and deleted objects can be recovered. So it's a good thing to enable versioning on your buckets, because you never know, you might lose something and you want to get it back. So that brings us to the end of the lecture on Amazon S3. I'll look forward to seeing you in the next one.